I'm going to tell you the story of Wilson Avenue, which was all born from an earlier round of the Public Safety Infrastructure Grants funding. So where are we? City of Moreland. We're about 5 kilometres from where we are standing this morning. City of Moreland's got about 160,000 people, strongly growing. Moreland's north, a bit of an internal kind of conflict, which many local governments have, in that Brunswick is very much part of the inner city, and the rest of Moreland is kind of part of Moreland's north. So there is kind of different socio-demographics and different urban structure. The project is on Wilson Avenue. If any of you know Brunswick or this part of Melbourne, you come up Royal Parade here. So this, where I'm pointing here, is City of Melbourne, Royal Parade. It's Parkville. It looks wonderful, beautiful boulevards, Royal Park. Once you cross Brunswick Road, you're in a very different neighbourhood. It changes quite significantly. So Wilson Avenue is the second block up. It directly kind of adjoins Berkeley Square Shopping Centre here, and also Jewell Railway Station here. This is the work that I did previously as a formal planner, a strategic planner. We did structure plans and we did planning and we did all this sort of stuff. And like Ben touched on earlier, there's acres and desks of these documents done, and it generates a huge amount of paper, which it has to be done. It's very necessary, but turning documents into reality is the massive challenge. And actually, my job description says implement the Brunswick structure plan. So this is the structure plan aspiration, shall we say, and this is what it shows in terms of the vision for Wilson Avenue. So again, this is Sydney Road. This shows a super tram stop here. This is Jewell Railway Station, and this is Wilson Avenue. It's a lovely pedestrian orientated street, lots of trees. There's even a water feature there. Lots of people, improved station forecourt, all the rest. It looks great. So this was endorsed by council for consultation in 2008, and then formally and finally in 2010, but the reality is a little bit different. It doesn't quite match the aspirations, and then going from the planning documents division to what's on the ground, there's a huge gap there, and how do you do that? That's the challenge, really. That's the challenge of government, effectively. What are the problems? So this touches on what Chris indicated, and we had to try and figure out what were the problems we were trying to address before we came to a solution in terms of how we were going to address that. We had a very close, or we still have a very close working relationship with the local police, and they've been great. We meet with them monthly and talk through issues around Moreland as a whole. And what we found out is that this area down here in the south, around Wilson Avenue, the Jewell Village precinct, as we call it, is actually the #1 high-risk community location or crime hotspot in Moreland. Basically, we talked a lot to the police, but one of the crucial things I think to do in this kind of place-based strategy is you've actually got to go down and spend a lot of time observing what's going on at different times of the day, morning time, afternoon, night time, weekend. What's happening around here? What's going on? And just sitting and observing. And this is classic urban design kind of theory. William White and that from New York in the 70s. Just observation of what's actually happening is really, really important. And so we came to the assertion or conclusion that the streets have no love and no staying power. There was nowhere in the precinct where anyone was actually stopping for any significant amount of time apart from the train platform or the tram stop. Even though there's really quite a lot of pedestrians around, there's a lot of foot flow, there was no reason for people to stop anywhere. So we thought that actually influenced crime and negative perception of safety, particularly at night. The quality and the turnover retail was also an issue that we identified at the time. So this is some images just to show you that this is the quality of retail type issues we were dealing with in the precinct. These are late night issues and related to, there's a number of late night drinking establishments around. There's a 24-hour RSL Tats Lotto place, and there's 24-hour McDonald's as well in the precinct. So they all attract a certain type of activities which peak on Friday and Saturday night, as you would expect. There's this phenomena of preloading, as they call it, before they go to the clubs. Then all sorts of general issues occurring on the weekend in particular. So this is actually Wilson Avenue itself, so Dangerfield Fashion Shop. Their wall used for bill posters, graffiti, generally looking very poor and not a very attractive place to spend any time. So we can't really overlook the context of what was happening in Brunswick at the time when the application was made for this particular round. It was just shortly after the Gillian Marr tragedy, which was just off Sydney Road, as I'm sure you're all aware. So there was a very strong community reaction, as you can see from this photo, towards the end of September 2012. The PSIF grants opened, I think, just after Christmas, so it was early 2013. So this was at the forefront of everybody's minds. One of the positive things about it is it sparked much closer working relationships between the Council, Department of Justice, the Business Association and Victoria Police. And we were very fortunate to have an absolutely fantastic local area commander, Inspector Dean McGowan, who's since left. Unfortunately, his Moreland's loss is Yarra's gain. He's gone to Yarra. He's been absolutely fantastic. As I told him as he left two months ago, we should name this space Dean McGowan Place, because if it wasn't for him, it wouldn't have happened, basically. So this is our pitch in 2013. The research and the evidence, as I said, we did a lot of observation, and we also went to the police and they provided us with stats, and they said, yes, this is your #1 crime hotspot, effectively. One of the most important things is finding partners, and that's both internal and external. So obviously councils are large organisations, they've got lots of different branches, lots of different units, just like the Banyule team has showed us. So I work on the places team, there's only 3 of us. So we had places, urban design, community safety, the cleansing team, the operations team in terms of waste and public space maintenance. They were all involved in shaping this. External, even just as critical, if not more critical. So we canvassed a number of external partners, and we had letters of support to go with the application from the Sydney Road Traders Association, from Berkeley Square Shopping Centre Management, from the Brunswick Residents Network, and from VicTrack, who own land adjoining. So we made sure, we gave our pitch to all these guys, and we said, will you write us a letter of support? And they all did. So I think that was very important. And then it's about finding a solution to address the problem that you've identified and delivering those benefits. Chris asked me to introduce this. I won't spend too long on this because this is a 2-day workshop just on this process alone. But it's called Investment Logic Standard. It's a standard, or it's a process that's been developed by the Department of Treasury, Victoria, to shape investments, large or more complex investments, but you can apply it to anything you like. So effectively, it's a 4-step process. It's identify the problem that you're trying to address, identify what would be the benefits if you fix that problem, what would be the outcomes, the benefits to the community if you fix that problem. And you undertake those 2 steps before you even talk about a solution. So you say, what's the problem? What would be the benefit if we fixed it? And then you start talking about, well, how are we going to actually address this problem and deliver the benefits that we've set out? So we identified these 2 problems. Essentially, there's a cause and an effect here. There's a shabby street with no reasons to linger, which results in crime and negative perception of safety. There's a lack of staying power on the street, which results in a high turnover retail. They're the problems we identified, and then we said, if we fix those problems, we will get these benefits, these 3 benefits here, and we will measure our effectiveness in delivering those benefits or outcomes by these KPIs. So we set ourselves quite long time frames, because this is not straightforward stuff. You don't turn around a #1 crime location in 6 months, you know. So we set ourselves effectively 3-year time frames. So this will no longer be the #1 crime hotspot by 2016. By next year, we wait and see. It's still the #1 crime spot this year, put it that way. Pedestrian count and staying power. This is the staying power bit. We'll sit down and we'll do a count. How many people are sitting around and staying there? And then there's another one, that how are we going to stimulate additional investment, private investment or non-council investment by 2016? And this is what we're going to measure ourselves on comprehensively next year. So this is the pitch. This is a map that was actually included in the application itself. So it is important to marshal all your evidence and be very visual about it as well, I think, and maps are a really important part of that. So this shows the intervention area that we proposed. This shows the other stuff happening in the area. So VicTrack, a big project at Jewell Station is happening. Berkeley Square put, actually, this is wrong, they put $23 million in the end, and that's done. So yeah, this is an important part of it. So this is what we pitched our urban designers, put together a photo montage relatively quickly, which showed a new public space. Actually shows room for vehicles either one way in or one way out. We weren't really sure at the time. And a climbing wall, and then some seats and trees and other nice public realm improvements. And we thought, maybe we could have food vans and a place for people to sit and have lunch, and this would work well. We even had solar panels on top of the wall at the time. So again, an early sketch of what was going to happen. We looked at other examples. This is actually in China. This is an urban bouldering facility in a city in China. I can't remember the city. This is an example in Sheffield in the UK. And this is the Burnley Tunnel in Melbourne here, just down by the Yarra River, some of you would know. Essentially, we'd had a couple of key drivers in the community who were into this thing called urban bouldering, who were into climbing, and they said, we'd love to have a facility somewhere in Brunswick. And we actually did a little bit of feasibility work with them. We said, maybe we could do it in a public space, maybe we could do it in a park. We'll figure it out. How much does it cost? Is there support? So one particular guy who was really passionate about it went off and started a petition to start this, to have an urban bouldering wall in Brunswick, and he got 600 signatories. So that was in the back pocket. So we said, right, great, let's just kind of pitch that and see how we go with it effectively. And as you would appreciate, it's a little bit left field, so there would have been some issues internally with internal management. And is this a good idea? Are we going to do this or what? So what happened again was we went up to our monthly catch up with the police inspector, local police inspector, Dean McGowan, and we'd already been talking to him about this application, and we'd identified that location as this is where we need to provide some form of intervention. And then we pitched this idea of a bouldering wall in the location. He just turned around and went, guys, I love it. So that was it. We just looked at each other then and went, yeah, right, we're going to go for this. Fantastic. He wrote a letter of support. We're like, brilliant. This is the local passionate guy, Stuart Bykemere. Front page of the local leader, climbing to safety, recreational approach to help fight crime. So there's been a lot of positive media on this as well. What's our guiding approach? Learn and involve by doing, small steps at a time, listen, measure and do, build momentum, and to have that really integrated, what I call hyper-local focus, and call it what you like. I call it placemaking at the moment. So this is what the street looked like in 2009. So what were these small steps that we took to build a story of change, to build a story of there is potential here? There's an idea called, or a movement called Parking Day, which originated in San Francisco probably 10 years ago now at this stage. And basically what you do is you take over a car parking space for one day, and you see what happens. You learn and you measure and you do. So this is effectively what we did. We had help from students from University of Melbourne who were interested. They were keen. University of Melbourne was only down the road. So they helped us make the car parking spot fun and a park for a day, actually 2 days. And there was colour and there was life, there was places to sit, there was things to do. And it was the first time, I reckon, that Wilson Avenue, or that precinct, the street had seen any love whatsoever in probably over 100 years. So that was kind of interesting. And we learned stuff from that, actually, because we took 2 car parking spaces, actually, and we learned that there was going to be a bit of opposition to taking car parking spaces. And we learned that early with just simple intervention, which was really instructive, actually. If we didn't take this first step, I don't think we would have got as far as we've got now, to be perfectly honest with you. So we got a little bit more ambitious then. We said, right, we said, what can we do here? Let's close the street entirely for one day and have a street party and see what happens. So this was only going 2 months after the first parking day. So we temporarily closed the road with just temporary stuff and had a party, basically. Did all sorts of stuff. Yoga, this yoga studio is on the street, so she was more than happy to come down and do a demonstration on the street. And we painted this mural on the floor, which is the local Aboriginal story has the Bunjil as the creator spirit of the Coogan nation. So we We painted a bunjil nest along with an elder who told a story of the bunjil, and it was great fun. We had 100 people on their hands and knees painting the bunjil, including the future mayor of Moreland, including the current Minister for Gaming and Liquor, and the local member, Jane Garrett. What attracts people most, it would appear, is other people. And if you just take that simple statement, you can build on that. And then we started getting a little bit more ambitious and said, well, you know, could we actually close that road to vehicles altogether? Is that possible? And we looked at the alternative routes in and out. And this would be open to, obviously, pedestrians and bikes. And we basically went to council then and we said, we've got this grant. We've done a bit of consultation. We've done parking day. We've done a one-day street party. What do you want to do next? How do you want to do this? And they were really, we said, we can go one way in, we can go one way out, we can try and keep it two-way, or we could close it fully. What do you think? And they couldn't reach a decision. There wasn't enough evidence for them to reach a decision. So we said, right, I'll tell you what, why don't we do a trial for 2 months and see what happens? And they were really happy with that. So we did a pop-up park. We said, we'll close it for 56 days for 2 months and we'll see what happens. They were more than happy to support this. So we had our depot guys bump in all temporary furniture, temporary trees, solar light. It was a bit of a mission. And then we did all sorts of fun stuff just to activate it, just to get people in the space. That's all we did. It was an open invitation. Who is around? Who's available? Who would like to get involved in doing fun stuff in the street? Open invitation. So we pulled whoever we could. There's a young Irish guy who works for Moreland City Council as a planner, and he is a very keen hurler. Hurling is an Irish sport, and he ran, just because he loves it, he ran hurling workshops every Monday, because Monday was kind of a quiet day. We got him in there. He ran that for 8 weeks. It was brilliant. We ran markets there, suitcase rummage. We ran drumming workshops every week for 8 weeks, just to annoy the neighbours and let them know we're there. What did we find happened? We found people mixed and started talking to each other. There was broad community interaction. We found that people started using their bikes more. This is the final day of the pop-up park. It's the 30th of March 2014, last year. This is the rally for the Stop the East-West Tunnel Link rally. So actually Jane Garrett was there as well, the Mayor of Moreland. There was lots of media there. We had about 1,500 people in the space, and then they marched up Sydney Road. But that was quite significant because it brought into people's mind that here is a community asset, a community space that people can use. Again, mixing of the kind of generations, and this is the last day again. So we kept on adding layers of, oh, let's paint the seats, let's paint the wall, let's do interesting stuff, keep layering developments. Directly when we closed it, we're well aware that there was going to be some people who were not going to support this intervention. So we said, let's go hard with a formal consultation process and let's open it up for a month. Let's push it through social media. Let's push it through with the neighbours. Let's get as many people as we can involved in this, which is not a traditional approach for local government. We usually, standard road closure stuff, you get about maybe 5. If it wasn't controversial, you get 5 people that would write in and make a submission. We had 356, mostly online, because we set up an online survey, made it easy for people to do it. We measured ourselves on these 4 things. How many submissions we got, how many visitors, this is an estimate, and what was the effect on crime. Now, Inspector Dean McGowan wrote a letter, he looked at the stats, and he said, I can't give you the exact stats, but I can tell you there was a clear reduction in local crime. And 94% of people said they wanted a public space here. So this was the evidence that we presented to council. We presented and we said, do you want to do this permanently? They said, yes, we do. So 6 months later, we started construction. This is the bouldering wall in production in Big Fish Workshop in Footscray. This is just before it was shipped. This is it being dropped in 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago with a crane. So pretty much the end of the story here. Critical success factors, clear vision with broad support, wouldn't have happened otherwise. The tactical interventions, I think, were really, really critical to stimulate interest and excitement. It wouldn't have happened otherwise, basically. There's a whole movement coming out of America called placemaking or tactical urbanism. There's actually a book called Tactical Urbanism, which I'd advise any of you to look up on the internet and buy. It talks about all this stuff. It talks about the problems of government being able to do things. It's so difficult, it's so expensive, there's so many regulations. Just do low cost, short-term stuff, show the potential of the space of the projects, and you will build interest and excitement. There did need to be a single focus within council to drive the project because, as you're all aware, councils are big, large organisations. There's lots of different competing priorities. So you do need a strong single focus and single drive. And we're lucky that the management gave us that at Moreland. And having fun is absolutely critical. We wouldn't be here otherwise. Lessons learned. Local governments know this already. Don't underestimate the expertise needed, the costs and the timeframes around capital works projects. They're very significant. Community facilitation, building place, building community is a distinct function. I would almost recommend, if you don't have the in-house capacity to do this, get someone local to do it for you, to act as a community facilitator, just for a temporary period. Build momentum and build support. Placemaking can be like building an airplane while you're flying, because when we did parking day, and even when we made the pitch, the original pitch, we had no idea we'd be doing this 2 years later, really. It was kind of, could have went multiple ways, really, but it ended up going this way. So this is generally about the findings of placemaking. It's effectively about building community. We had a quick conversation. Can capital works projects on their own prevent crime? And I think the answer is probably no. I think most people would say no, they can't. You have to actually build community as well as part of it. This is our programme. We won some planning awards for it and some place practice awards for it, which was good to get the recognition. And this was actually really important because we were stuck for funding at more than one point. and this helped us get it over the line with our local council to provide the additional funding it needed to get over the line. That's it.
Any questions for Will?
How did you go with council regarding the potential safety issues with the bouldering wall?
Look, it was a very interesting question, and the mayor in particular at the time was like, "Are you sure this is going to work? What's the story with this bouldering wall?" And so we talked through what it is, and effectively what we see it is, you've got skate parks, right, and public liability around skate parks. This is actually the same, but it's preferable to skate parks, in our opinion, in a space like this, because skate parks are essentially for young males, really. This is for male, female, young, old. Actually, really interesting, we had a public forum, and some guy a local guy, was saying that this is never going to work, this is rubbish, who's going to climb, I'll never climb. And then his neighbour, actually a guy in his late 70s, turned around and said, "Oh, I have a friend, he's in his 70s, he just started climbing last year, he loves it." And I was just sitting back going, I don't need to say anything. But there does need to, you can't just drop it in, there needs to be a local base there, I was
wondering if council had a complementary activities program following on from the Built Form initiative.
We obviously had a budget during the pop-up park, and we programmed it pretty much every day. Now as we get into a permanent space, so it's not like you've got this rush of 2 months where you're trying to get as much done as possible. It's a permanent space now. So the main activity is formal activity will be climbing, but we have some money, we have maybe $10,000 to activate for the next financial year. We actually pitched for a Vic Health grant, they had place activation grants out recently, but we didn't get it because they said, you're just chucking in something you're doing already. But anyway, we gave it a go.
Hello, you commented on a number of tactical solutions throughout the process, and then the final wall being dropped in, the climbing wall. Yeah. What's the mix of functions that will happen in the space when when you've realised what you want to do?
Effectively, there's 4 rooms. So there's the room, as it were, of the wall, which has soft wall around it. At the front, there's a grassy knoll, which is just a general seating area, which is elevated to 1 metre, which is green. There's no green on Sydney Road, and allows people to sit in all directions to just catch up or grab a cup of coffee or whatever. At the back, then we've got more seating walls, and this is kind of our performance area, which is much smaller than it was previously, but it still allows. We've got 3-phase power in, and we've got a water fountain here. So there will be performance space here at the back, but we don't have the resources to program it every week. like we had during the pop-up park.